everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I'm your host, Lorelei. This week we will continue with the case of Sandra Birchmore. Last week we talked about the last day that she was seen alive, her body being found, and about her time in the Stoughton Police Department's Explorers program. We also found out about her interactions with several local police officers and their inappropriate behavior with Sandra when she was a minor, along with the fact that Sandra was pregnant when she died, and the father was allegedly one of these officers. We ended with the police chief's statement at the press conference, where she released the results of an internal investigation into these officers, which led her to request that they be decertified. Today, we will talk more in depth about each of these officers and about what the investigation uncovered. First, let's talk about the obvious officer, Sandra's alleged baby daddy, Matthew Farwell. Matthew Farwell had been a member of the Explorers during his teenage years and had been designated the rank of deputy chief within the program in 2002. After high school, he joined the military, but later acted as a quote-unquote guest instructor in the Explorer program under the direction of Robert Devine. He became a Stoughton police officer on March 27th of 2012. Matthew Farwell was found to have violated Stoughton Police Department's rules and regulations by demonstrating conduct that is unbecoming to an officer. He demonstrated immoral, improper, and disorderly personal conduct that discredits him as an officer. The investigation found that Farwell had lied during his interview with the state police about his and Sandra's relationship not starting until 2020. It was found that he started having a sexual relationship with Sandra when she was just 15 years old and he was 27, 2 to 3 years after she joined the Explorers. The relationship continued for many years and included sexual interactions and communications while Matthew Farwell was on duty for the Stoughton Police. While he was supposed to be upholding his oath he took when he became a police officer to protect the citizens of Stoughton, he instead was sleeping with an underage girl and meeting up with her while on the clock. It was found that he failed to demonstrate quote-unquote sound judgment when he would text Sandra to meet up so they could have sex or she could perform sexual acts on him while in his patrol car and while on duty. This scumbag had the nerve to tell Sandra that a police officer's job is stressful and he needed her to do these things to help relieve his stress. What a dirty piece of shit. He knew Sandra was a vulnerable child and that she looked up to him, and he took advantage of it for his own pleasure. On February 24th of 2021, Matthew was put on paid administrative leave and had to turn in his government-issued equipment and phone, which he said was fine because he had, quote-unquote, nothing to hide. However, on March 11th, 2022, he put in his resignation, and it went into effect on April 1st of 2022. Next, we will talk about William Farwell, Matthew's twin brother. He became a Stoughton police officer on March 21st, 2017, and he resigned on August 1st of 2022, after being put on a paid administrative leave on April 12th of 2022. He was part of the Explorers as a teenager also, and in 2002 was given the rank of lieutenant in the program. Like his brother, he entered the military after high school and was also a guest instructor in the program under Devine. Matthew was interviewed on February 11th, 2021, regarding Sandra's death. He said he had met her around 10 years earlier, also like his brother, and that in 2018, while he was assigned to a paid detail, Sandra approached him, and they began talking about her interest in joining the Army. He said that he put her in touch with an Army recruiter, and Sandra began to contact him on a regular basis after that. William admitted during his interview, which, just to let you know how casual this interview was, it didn't take place in a police station. No, it happened while he was sitting in his patrol car in a shopping center parking lot. He told the detective that he had a sexual relationship with Sandra that went back about 2 years. The relationship ended, though, when Sandra crossed the line. She dared to approach him and his family at a 4th of July event. How dare she do that? The mistress cannot meet the wife. What was she thinking? After that, he blocked her on social media. I mean, he couldn't let his wife find out that he was a cheating scumbag, now could he? Even though she now knows. However, he said even though he blocked her on social media, he didn't cut her off completely, and that they stayed in contact off and on for a while. When he was asked about the baby that Sandra had been pregnant with, he stated that it definitely was not his. He said that Sandra had told him the father was his brother Matthew. William Farwell was notified on March 12th of 2021 that he was under investigation. The police report states that text messages show that William was in contact with Sandra going back to at least April of 2020, and that there is evidence that at least 5 of these text exchanges happened while he was either working a shift or on paid detail. A lot of what went on between William and Sandra was redacted in the report, but he did meet up with her while on duty, and she had been in his patrol car. He also had met up with her at a restaurant while he was on duty. He was found to demonstrate conduct unbecoming of an officer and demonstrated immoral, improper, and disorderly personal conduct that discredits him as an officer. He was also found guilty of coercing Sandra through text messaging, which what he was coercing her to do was also redacted in the report, so we don't know what that was. He was also caught lying about the last time he saw her. He said he had last seen her in December of 2020, the month that Matthew claims that Sandra would have gotten pregnant. But text messages revealed that William and Sandra had sexual relations in the parking lot of her apartment building after midnight on January 10th of 2021, less than a month before she was found dead. Do these people not realize that cell phones show times and dates? Also, it was found that William had conducted criminal justice information services searches on Sandra and on himself over the years. From what they were able to uncover, William had run 2 on Sandra and 1 on himself in October. Or no, he ran 2 on Sandra. One of them was in October of 2019, and the other one was in November of 2019. And 24 on himself between the dates of October 2017 and January of 2019. A Criminal Justice Information Services, or CJIS search, is a request for criminal justice information from the FBI and is a massive database on people. It's one of the largest divisions within the FBI. It is available for law enforcement agencies on federal, state, and local levels, and is used in the investigative process. It includes a wide range of sensitive information like fingerprint records. It is the largest database for this and contains over 77 million fingerprints. It has over 3 million iris scans, also known as eye recognition software or a biometric matching model, which is a way to identify people. They say that eventually the FBI is going to switch over completely from fingerprints to iris scanning. It contains criminal histories and information about investigations and individuals involved in the criminal justice system. They can be used for things such as law enforcement employment checks, conceal and carry permits, or military protection orders. So why was William running his and Sandra's names? Current investigations and warrants are listed on CJIS. Was he worried that he was going to be investigated for something that had to do with Sandra? William was accused of having inappropriate texting conversation with Birchmore while on duty, misusing a law enforcement database for unauthorized searches, and being dishonest with state police investigators about his communications with Sandra. Next, we have Mr. Robert Devine, the leader of this pathetic group of perverted officers of the law. He became a member of the Stoughton Police Department on October 4th of 1999 and was a designated officer in charge of the Explorer program from 2002 to 2014. He was placed on paid administrative leave on April 4th of 2022 until he too resigned on August 16th of 2022. Robert told investigators that he quote unquote desired to cooperate, but then started making outrageous accusations of accounts being hacked. The investigators weren't dumb though and knew he was trying to cover his own ass. During his interview, Robert was asked if he kept in touch with Sandra after she left the Explorers, and he said that he had not, but that Sandra would find him, but that she never had his cell phone number. Robert talked about Sandra's obsession with police officers as if that was a bad thing and gave them the right to take advantage of her. He admitted that he would meet her while on duty and she would offer to bring him coffee. He said that they would normally just talk for a while and then he would leave. He said this happened about once a week and that it was totally innocent. He denied having any type of social interaction outside of the police department and never communicated with her by texting, messaging, any social media platforms, burner phones, or any other forms of communications. He then went on to talk about Sandra, how Sandra liked to exaggerate stories, and that one time around her 21st birthday, he ran into her at a bar in Brockton, but that when she approached him, he got up and left. At first, Devine said that he didn't know about Sandra's relationship with Matthew Farwell until he went out on leave, but then later said that Sandra had mentioned the relationship previously as a quote-unquote consenting adult. Robert said she had also spoken to him about her relationship with William Farwell, but that he didn't believe her. When investigators told Devine that at that point they had not found any direct communication between him or Sandra yet, he replied, "Because you won't find it." However, that was a lie because they did in fact find it. After his interview, investigators found an abundance of evidence proving that Robert Devine was a lying sack of shit. There was evidence in Sandra's phone that she had told William Farwell through a text message that she had sexual relations with Robert Devine. There was also direct contact between Sandra and Robert Devine through Facebook Messenger between November 27th of 2020 and February 1st of 2021. Their messages were sexual in content, and there was also at least one instance where Devine was on duty and met up with Sandra at a local restaurant. There was also a Facebook account that was talking to Sandra under the name of Marty Riggs that was discovered to be Robert Devine. He was found to fail to demonstrate sound judgment and to be untruthful when he told the investigators that he had not had any contact or relationship with Sandra. When they tried to schedule a second interview with Robert, that is when he chose to resign, because he knew his dumbass had been caught. The investigators found 2 letters in Robert Devine's file during their investigation. One was from Sandra's mother and was dated April 17th of 2014. It was a letter extending thanks to the Stoughton Police Department, in particular, Officer Robert Devine, for running the Explorers program. The other letter was not dated or signed, but was titled, "My Hero, Lieutenant Devine," and was wrote to Devine to recognize all that he had done for the community. Yuck. They included these letters in the report to show the trust that the public had in both the Stoughton Police and in the Explorers, and how their trust was violated. They also found information during their investigation that led them to believe that Devine had been improper with another underage girl when he was working as a school resource officer and would chaperone a group of kids who stayed after school for open gym. When they interviewed this woman, she admitted that at the time she was 12 or 13 and was in that after-school program. She said she was very open at the time about having a crush on Robert Devine. She stated that she wrote a letter to him that basically professed her love for him and how beautiful she thought he was. She admitted during her interview that thinking back on it now, it's very cringy and embarrassing. She said it was a very detailed letter about her feelings for him. She knew she had written this letter in October of 2001 because the events of September 11th had just happened. She stated that she handed him the letter. He didn't read it in front of her, but in the next few days, whenever he saw her, he would give her a hug and laugh a little bit, but never said anything to her about the letter at all. The investigators asked her about this quote-unquote hug, and she said it was definitely a squeeze and that Robert initiated hugs from female students all the time. When she was asked if he had ever touched her sexually, she was very clear that he never did. There was, however, an occasion when Robert did take the girl into an office during open gym time. She stated it happened a couple of months after she gave him the letter. She had found out that he had gotten engaged, and she was devastated. She was crying, and Robert heard her, so he came up to her and led her to a room that she thought might have been a gym teacher's office. He took her inside, closed the door, and lifted her by her waist onto the desk. Robert told the girl she was a knockout and said that he was going to take her on a date as soon as she turned 18. What kind of Lifetime movie am I reading right now? He then gave her a hug and kissed her on the forehead. She said this room they were in was not close to the gym, and there's no way that anyone else heard them. She said the only other adult who was ever at the open gym was one other officer who was there occasionally. There was never anyone from the school there, and the Farwells were also there. They were teenagers at the time, and she said they were under Robert's wing. She stated that she got a hold of Robert Devine on Instant Messenger and exchanged a few short messages with him. That is, until her dad's girlfriend found out, called Robert a creep, and blocked her after that. She said that she remembers after that she would see Robert driving around town with middle school girls in his personal vehicle. When she was asked if Robert was acting as a big brother or father figure to the kids at school, she stated, quote, "He was definitely not like the father figure. He definitely seemed to be showing off and loving attention from kids and basking in kids admiring him," end quote. And there was more to Devine's shady behavior. Devine was demoted and received a 60-day unpaid suspension in 2016 after a past internal affairs investigation found that he improperly ordered an investigation into a possible violation of harassment orders using department resources and technology. The orders were taken out by him and his then wife against an Easton woman with whom Devine was having extramarital affairs with. Around 2015, Officer Devine, who was 42 at the time, was having an affair with a 30-year-old girl. Eventually, she broke it off with him and he was pissed. So he sent inappropriate photos of himself and this girl to everyone in the police department and made it look like the girl had sent them. He said she did it because he ended the affair and she was trying to get back at him. The girl was actually arrested and charged with violating harassment prevention orders. The police chief at the time, Paul Chastany, stood by his deputy chief, Devine, seeing that he was the victim in this case, and stated the situation was a quote-unquote personal matter. Chastany said, quote, "He is ensured due process. He is a victim, and when the case finds its way to court, the truth and all the information that is circulating will come out. And what will happen is that there will be an assessment. We'll assess as we move downstream." Well, an internal investigation was done, and the truth did come out, but it wasn't in Devine's favor. So he was demoted and suspended for his actions. So he tried to cause a woman to be charged and have a record while he played the victim and spread nude photos around of her because she didn't want to see him anymore. And he was the one that was married at the time. That shows you the kind of person we're dealing with. These three officers weren't the only dirtbags that were discovered to take advantage of Sandra. On November 4th of 2021, while going through Sandra's laptop that had been synchronized with her phone, they discovered conversations between Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, and a recruiter from the Massachusetts Army National Guard, who was believed to be Sandra's recruiting officer that William Farwell had set her up with. His name was redacted in the investigative report. Whatever these conversations were, they must have been really bad because they were said to be of interest to the U.S. military and were in fact handed over to them. They also found photos and videos that had been exchanged between Sandra, William, and Matthew. And there was a fifth person who was found during the investigation who was said to have taken advantage of Sandra. This man was also introduced to Sandra by William Farwell. He is a former Stoughton Animal Control Officer, and in 2021 was a school resource officer for a school in the town over from Stoughton. It's sad when you can't trust the officers that are working in your children's schools. This officer's name was accidentally left unredacted in the report. His name is Joshua Heel. On December 21st of 2021, when investigators questioned Joshua, he was more than happy to talk to them at first. He told them that he was friends with Robert Devine and the Farwell brothers. He said he met Birchmore through them and she would often come to meet him at the animal shelter. He stated that he tried to discourage Sandra from having high expectations of where her relationship with Matthew Farwell was heading. When the investigators started questioning him about the information they came across in Sandra's phone concerning him, he stopped the interview and said he wanted to consult with legal counsel. Later that month, the investigators went to the Stoughton Animal Control Shelter. They attempted to locate adoption papers where Sandra had adopted a cat from the shelter in 2018 or 2019. She had told several people that she had adopted at least one of her cats from the shelter, but no documents were found in relation to Sandra adopting a cat. And then, in January of 2022, investigators requested a forensic analysis of a couch that was located in the Stoughton Animal Shelter. However, the results of the forensic analysis were redacted in the police report. It's believed that something they found during their investigation led them to believe that Hill solicited a sexual act from Sandra in exchange for a cat, and that the act took place on the couch at the shelter. Joshua agreed to come in for a second interview on February 9th of 2022. Most of this interview was redacted, but there was a part where he talked about some type of location sharing app that Matthew Farwell had used to track Sandra's location. During the internal investigation, investigators had trouble getting Sandra's friends to talk to them. They told investigators that some of the officers in the Stoughton Police Department had reached out to them after Sandra's death, calling them liars and threatening them. This led to investigators talking about filing witness intimidation charges against these officers. Other witnesses who had been members of the Explorers in earlier years came forward and claimed that they had seen inappropriate behavior being displayed by Robert Devine and the Farwell brothers. They stated there had been some hugging and kissing and that inappropriate contact took place in a closet. After the results of the internal investigation came out to the public in September of 2022, Chief Donna McNamara said she was going to make sure what these officers did to Sandra would never happen to anyone else, at least at the hands of these morons. They were going to make a recommendation to the Post to revoke their certifications and enter them into the National Decertification Database. This would ensure that they would never get jobs in law enforcement again. In December of 2022, the family of Sandra Birchmore filed a wrongful death suit against the officers, the town of Stoughton, and the Stoughton Police Department. The wrongful death lawsuit, which referred to Birch's death as a quote-unquote alleged suicide, says that 3 members of the Stoughton Police Department groomed Birchmore for several years and engaged in illegal sexual activity with her, and that their actions pushed her to suicide. According to Boston.com, the complaint also accuses the town of Stoughton and its police department of negligence in hiring Matthew Farwell and his twin brother, William Farwell, and in supervising them and Robert Devine. The lawsuit stated that the Farwell brothers were hired even though members of the force knew that when they were teenagers, they had impersonated police officers and pulled over motor vehicles. The town and its police force also owed Birchmore a duty of care to protect her from the abuse and inappropriate conduct that she faced from the Farwell brothers and Devine. There has been silence concerning Sandra's case for the last 2 years, and not many people even knew about Sandra's case. It wasn't well publicized by the media outlets or by true crime creators until Karen Reed and John O'Keefe happened. Then people started talking about Sandra's case and the fact that it's similar to Karen Reed because it involved some of the same less than respectable officers and some other ones from just a town over from Canton, where John O'Keefe was killed. Then this past June of 2024, something major happened that blew Sandra's case out of the water and gave validation to the theories that her family and friends have had since Sandra's death, regarding the fact that they weren't fully convinced that her death was a suicide. World-renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, who has been involved in cases such as George Floyd, Jeffrey Epstein, and O.J. Simpson, took a look at Sandra's case at the request of her family, and what he found could change everything, such as reopening the investigation into Sandra's death and holding someone accountable. He stated in his report that there is evidence pointing to Sandra's manner of death being a homicide and not a suicide, as it was listed after her death. He stated that there was a fracture in her hyoid bone, which means she was strangled to death and did not die by hanging, as it had been stated she had in the autopsy report. A sexual assault kit was also performed on Birchmore, but it was never tested. It's normal protocol to do a sexual assault kit anytime there is a female victim, just in case they need it later. It can still be tested, but there are so many shelved and backlogged that they don't have the funds to test all of them right away, unless there's a rush put on it. Also, swabs, nail scrapings, nail clippings, and hair might need to be pushed ahead of other evidence, as these things don't sustain as long. The wrongful death suit filed by Sandra's family talked about Matthew and Sandra's relationship since she was 15, and the fact that he was the alleged father of her baby. However, in Dr. Baden's report, he stated, quote, "While the state medical examiner found that Birchmore was pregnant when she died, the office apparently did not send fetal tissue for DNA analysis to determine who the father was." Donna McNamara, the current chief of the Stoughton Police Department, issued a statement acknowledging Dr. Baden's statements concerning Sandra's death. Here's what she had to say. Quote, "As chief of the Stoughton Police Department, I have directly participated in this lengthy and aggressive internal investigation. In September of 2022, I released an executive summary which revealed for the first time the horrific injustices include grooming and sexual abuse inflicted upon Sandra Birchmore at the hands of one rogue and corrupt former police officer, and additional inappropriate sexual relationships by other former police officers. I just need to be clear that our police department has no jurisdiction over the investigation of Sandra's death, which occurred in a different community, which was Canton. However, I will reiterate that the Stoughton Police Department has assisted and continues to cooperate with other law enforcement agencies. Sandra received not so much as a sliver of justice during her life, and we will not cease in our efforts to ensure our duty to administer justice, and she is not forgotten in the aftermath of her death. However, as a police administrator and investigator with decades of experience, I will be remiss if I did not remark that I have reviewed the findings of the outside doctor retained by Sandra's family. I was profoundly disturbed and troubled by what I read. While I am not a trained medical examiner and I am not qualified to draw any direct conclusions, the findings certainly warrant further examination at the highest level. End quote. This is the problem. Even though Chief McNamara seems on board with Dr. Baden's findings, and she was quick to take action against the officers for what they did to Sandra, Sandra's death happened out of McNamara's jurisdiction because Sandra lived in Canton and died there. It is up to the Canton police to investigate, which means we would be relying on the same officers who investigated the case of John O'Keefe and the same Norfolk District Attorney, Michael McMuffin Morrissey, who is the one going after Karen Reed, which leaves much to be desired and not much hope for an honest and thorough investigation, in my opinion. Joseph Scott Morgan, a distinguished scholar of applied forensics who appears regularly on shows such as Crime Stories with Nancy Grace and who hosts the podcast Body Bags, made a statement about Dr. Baden's findings regarding Sandra. He said when Dr. Baden speaks, people listen. And boy, did they. On August 28th of 2024, Matthew Farwell was arrested and indicted for the murder of Sandra Birchmore. So next week, we will go over that indictment and some new info that has come out with the indictment and talk about why it took so long to get to this point. For photos from Sandra's case, check out the Victim's Voice on Facebook and Instagram, and come back next week for the third installment in the case of Sandra Birchmore. Until then, peace out.